Everyone's entitled to their opinions. I would say at the end of the day, our job is to, we want the best for our athletes. I don't want anyone to ever think that we don't care less about our athletes because we allowed them to take more damage. That's absolutely not the case.
The AllStar app, the #1 app in the business. UFC, Bellator, One Championship, PFL, and more. Get the app right now. Link in description. Now, the first thing that I wanted to get into is the urge to fight as a coach. Does it ever hit you throughout the years?
Yeah, it does. So let's see. My last fight was October of 2016. So we're coming up on 6.5 years now that I've been out of the ring. I would say over time, it diminishes, but it's still there. There are definitely certain times or after certain fights, before certain fights where I'm like, man, I miss this part of it. I miss being in the fighter's shoes. There's other times, of course, where I don't miss any part of it, like going through weight cuts with the fighters and stuff. I'm really glad I don't have to do that part anymore. So yeah, it's there still. Certain moments definitely spark it, but over time, like I said, I think it's diminishing a little bit more as I'm firmly solid in a coaching position now, and I've embraced that. Most of my energy is there, and I really, really enjoy this part of the game. So yeah, I would say it's just every now and then it kind of pops up again, but I really do enjoy coaching.
Do you spar still from time to time?
I do. Yeah, I do. I spar quite a bit with my Muay Thai fighters, my amateur guys especially. I think it's important to. I believe as a coach, like one of my philosophies, especially as a striking coach, if you're able to, you should be giving your fighters as many looks as possible. So to me, that also means throwing back on the pads, shooting, defending shots for my MMA guys, stuff like that. You need to be making that stuff interactive and reactive. So I do work with my Muay Thai guys quite a bit. With my MMA guys, I try to incorporate that into the pad holding, like our striking sessions. I'll mix it up with them a little bit. But yeah, I try to stay active with them if I can.
You were in the corner, UFC 283. There was some controversy surrounding the Lauren Murphy-Jessica Andrade fight. What did you think about the response from the public and some of the figures in the sport?
Yeah, it's a tough spot to be in, man. There's so many factors that go into these fights and scenarios like that. I think it's easy for the public to, they'll hear a narrative from the commentary team or something, and it's very easy for them to get on board with that, without knowing everything that goes into this. Look, at the end of the day, is there a case for that fight being stopped? Yeah, 100%. We've probably seen fights with less damage than that have been stopped in the past. These are all case by case basis. It's very difficult to say one way or the other. Should this be stopped? Yes or no. There's so many factors that go into it, man. So I think as a coach, you at this level, you have to be kind of immune to what the public is going to say, what Twitter is going to say, whether it's right or wrong. Look, man, even people that are in this sport very close, if you haven't been in a coaching role, even if you're a fighter, if you've been a fighter for a long time, but you never coached, then it's a different seat on the bus. And you come at it from a different angle. So, everyone's entitled to their opinions. I would say at the end of the day, our job is to, we want the best for our athletes. I don't want anyone to ever think that we don't care less about our athletes because we allowed them to take more damage. That's absolutely not the case. In my opinion, I do think that, first and foremost, the ref's job is to protect the athletes. And I would say that referee, I think his last name is Maya, Osiris Maya or something. I think he slipped up more than once that night. He was the same ref that ref the Terrence McKinney fight. And if you remember that, Terrence's mouthpiece came out a couple times. And it came out before he got knocked out with that knee. And the ref did not give it back to him. So I thought that guy had probably not the best night. as a ref. And when you put these guys on the pay per view, man, they have to be at their best. You know, they absolutely have to be at their best. Um, Looking back and rewatching that fight, you know, he never even came over to the corner and said, "Hey, we need to see something from you, or I'm going to stop this fight." He never even got close in the fight of like, "Hey, I'm inching in to stop this fight." And when I rewatched that fight, there's probably two times where I would have been fine with him waving the fight off, and he never did. You know, he never even, you know, made a move to get closer to the athletes to stop that. And so it's easy for people quickly to go to the corner, and I don't want to like defer blame necessarily. Like we still own that. We want to make sure we're accountable. Our job is also to protect the athlete, but our job is also to help the fighters win. That's not the referee's job. The referee's job is to protect the athletes first and foremost. You know. So I do think, man, I think everyone involved in that night could have been better. You know, Lauren right now is fine. A lot of that was she has a lot, you know, bumps and bruises, and those have gone away already. She's going to take off the necessary time to make sure that she's fully healed before we get back in there, and just follow, you know, like the correct protocols for brain safety and stuff. You know, but man, these decisions are tough in the moment. You know, it's if we stop the fight, she's guaranteed half of her money, you know? And what does that do to an athlete when you waive the fight off for them too? You know, it's a lose-lose situation for coaches. And it can be for athletes sometimes too. So I'm not saying what we did was right or wrong. I'm just saying it's a really difficult situation. And I think we're all going to kind of take away from that incident, from that situation, and we'll learn from it moving forward. You know, Lauren did tell us, you know, she would have been furious if we had stopped that fight. And that's fair, you know. So it is what it is, man. You know, she's fine now, thankfully. Um, she gets to live the fight another day. We're gonna do our best to make sure she's not in a situation like that ever again, where we have to worry about stopping a fight. Um, but like I said, I think everyone, including the referee and the doctor, could have done better in that instance.
After that fight or after the event, I did a post-fight show with Dan Hooker, and he said the exact same thing that you're talking about. It's like you don't know the connection that the coaches have with the fighter. You don't know the circumstances that the fighter is under. You don't know the repercussions of a coach stopping a fight. That could end up tarnishing the relationship between a fighter and a coach. And he also said exactly what you said is it's the referee's job to stop the fight. It's the referee's job. He doesn't have repercussions. His job, he's doing his job by stopping the fight, by protecting the fighter. And all this backlash onto the corners is unwarranted. Like, why would you blame the corner? You should be blaming the referee for not stopping the fight. That's his job. He went deep into it, man, and I was just like, when he explained it that way, and I was like, damn, that's right, he is correct. And then you say it almost exactly the same way, and I'm thinking like, people need to listen to the fighters. People need to listen to the coaches and understand like their position. And he also said like, you don't know if the fighter has like a mortgage, you know, that they have to pay off. Like these are things that's not going to come out to the public. You know what I mean? These are like
Right.
intimate things between the fighter and the coaches, and you don't know what position that they're in. So um, when the fight wasn't stopped, after Dan explained to me that way, I was just like, damn, man, like how could you stop the fight? You know what I mean? Unless it was really
Yeah.
serious. Unless it was, like,
There,
really
there's
extensive.
there's so much that goes into that, just like you said. And look, I'll add even another layer into that. Like, you know, her husband Joe Murphy is in the corner with us as well too. You know, he walks the line of being one of her coaches and also her husband and like her life partner. You know, so that adds a totally another dynamic into the corner that most people don't have. You know, and he didn't want the fight stopped necessarily. You know, he didn't speak out about it, and we talked about it after, and he was comfortable with that too. You know, so like that changes things entirely. I think another thing that you have to consider, like when we were in there in between rounds, Lauren was competent and coherent to what we were saying. She was there in her eyes. You know, I've seen fighters, and I've stopped fights in the past 100%. I've seen fighters on the stool that don't want to be there, you know, like, or they're broken or they have a severe injury. And it's like, yeah, the fight for sure. There's no doubt in my mind this fight has to be stopped. But if the fighter is there and they're looking at you in the eyes and they're coherent and repeating back what you're saying, you know, when they want to fight, that's different to me, you know. And like I said, especially at this level, we're talking about a top 5 fight in the UFC, potential contender, implications here. Our job as coaches is to help this athlete find a way to win the fight. Um, and the referee's job is to protect the fighters and look out for fighter safety. I know, like Luke Thomas put out he put out a thing after and said sometimes the coaches knowing the athlete so well can actually work against them, right? Where they believe so much that they think the fighter's going to win, even if that's not going to be the case. That may be true. It's kind of our job, and that's why I so firmly believe that the ref has to be there to protect the athletes. And I do think that referee failed that night. I even think if we had Herb or Herzog or Goddard, they would have stopped that fight. And I would have been fine with that. I would have been okay with that. But the fight was continuing still, and our job was to try to find a way back into that fight, and we couldn't. And yeah, man. So that's the way these things go sometimes. I know people get up in arms kind of about, taking excessive damage and stuff like this. Fuck, man. I don't know. It's the fight game, like I don't like seeing people take necessarily excessive damage. But where's the line, like where do you draw that line? Like if you had two guys go fight 5 rounds and they drop each other multiple times and they're cut and they're bleeding, like, and it's a close fight, you would applaud that, but they would take way more damage than what Lauren took on that night over 3 rounds, So like, it's kind of just it's a weird discussion. And I don't want to,
It's the lens, man. It's the lens that people are
ex-
looking at it through. Because if Lauren would have went into the 3rd round and ended up like clipping Andrade and submitting her
yeah,
or knocking
yeah.
her out, then no one would be talking about this.
Exactly. Exactly. And look, I'm not saying that she was maybe necessarily close, but she had a Kimura grip in the 3rd round. Maybe she reverses Jessica there and gets on top, finishes whatever it is, right? Like there was a sliver of hope still, and it's like we have to fight for those inches in a fight. Like, it could turn at that moment. And like you said, yeah, what if she gets on top and she chokes Jessica? Then what? We're not even having this discussion, right? Everyone's praising Lauren for how tough she was in the fight and turning it around.
Bonuses, Dana
Yeah,
White's
all
out
this.
there.
eh,
It changes the narrative
Exactly.
completely.
Exactly. And so for me, I think as a coach, I have to make sure that I insulate myself a little bit from public opinion, even people that are involved in the sport, that are not necessarily in a coaching role. They serve a different purpose and have a different lens, like you said, than I have a different lens. And look, I'll tell you this, at the end of the day, a lot of people had an opinion on it. The people's opinion that I respect the most and will listen to on this are the people that have been in this spot before. So I'm talking about the Tyson Chartiers, the Trevor Whitmans, right? Nick Sick. I'm going to take Elliot Marshall. I'm going to take their opinion. And when they tell me right or wrong, I stand by what you did, I'm going to listen to them because they've been there in those exact spots. And I talked to all of those guys after the fight, and they all had something really important to say. And everyone else, even if they're highly respected in the sport, if they're not in the coaching role, I have to do my best to insulate myself from that opinion, because it's like you said, it's a different lens at the end of the day.
Now, for yourself, man, what's next for the Easton fighters? Like, who's coming up?
So we have Bojan Velickovic. He is doing that Ocktagon. I don't know if you saw that they're doing that
$1 million?
16-man welterweight. Yeah, €1 million. So his first fight is March 4th over in Czech Republic. He's got a guy, Hyon, who I think is like 12-4. He fought a couple times for KSW over there, and Ocktagon signed him for this tournament. So that's next on the horizon for my MMA guys. And then right behind that, the week after, is the Team USA qualifier for Muay Thai. So that's going to be in Denver, Colorado, which is awesome. It's a Pro-Am tournament, and the winners of that earn their spot to go on Team USA to fight at the IFMA World Championships in Bangkok in May. So I actually have 5 guys competing in that, which is going to be awesome. It'll be a busy week for us there. But yeah, those are going to be our 2 next big events. Will be Bojan on March 4th, and then the Team USA qualifier the weekend right after that.